Climate Hub. And I'll be moderating tonight's webinar. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory and that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, specifically the Garden River and the Batchewana First Nations, as well as Métis people. Could you put up the first slide for me there, Ted, please? Just want to provide for some of you that are joining us for the first time or that don't know a little bit of information about the Sault Climate Hub. We are a nonpartisan group of concerned citizens advancing climate change mitigation and adaptation. Back one slide, Ted. And our goal is to align Sault Ste. Marie with the scientific, aspirational, and global targets for greenhouse gas emission reductions. And we aim to do this through education, engagement, and action, such as this webinar tonight and the other webinars we've had as part of our webinar series. The Sault Climate Hub is part of something called the Climate Reality Project Canada. That's the Canadian component of a global movement of about 21,000 dedicated volunteers from 154 countries around the world. So a large organization that supports us and we support them in the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and controlling climate change. If you're interested in all in following our activities or joining the hub as a volunteer, our contact information is shown on this slide. We have been undergoing this webinar series for about 1.5 years, and those are all archived as well on YouTube, and you can find where to connect with those on our Facebook page. Next slide, please, Ted. Tonight's presentation title is Food Security and Climate Change, Harvest Algoma's Food Rescue Program. Unfortunately, Carson Beauregard was unable to be here tonight, but we're really happy to welcome Gary Vipond, the CEO of United Way Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma District, to present to us this evening. Gary graduated from Queen's University with a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry and Lake Superior State University with a Master's of Business Administration degree. And for the last 21 years, he's been the CEO of the United Way locally. He's overseen huge changes in the United Way that historically was known as a fundraising body to what it is today, a community impact organization. In Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma, the United Way is directly addressing the root causes of poverty in our communities, focusing on 3 priority issues and their respective outcomes. Those 3 areas are essential services, workforce entry, and food security. And we're going to hear about the food security tonight in Gary's presentation. It was Gary that really led the United Way to take the bold step in July 2018 to open the Harvest Algoma Food Resource Center on 2nd Line in Sault Ste. Marie to address the issue of food security in our region. Welcome, Gary. We're really looking forward to your presentation tonight.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just trying to get the screen share. Here we go. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So as Paul mentioned, United Way has gone through a lot of changes over the years. And in 2016, we decided that we were going to focus entirely on poverty reduction. That was a big change. We had been involved in a lot of different things over the years, but focusing on poverty reduction was, we felt at the time, the right thing to do, and we still believe that. Just quickly, we've done the math, and we've determined that there are approximately 14,000 people in the district of Algoma that are living in poverty, and we do this. We've determined that from the people that come to us for help through our energy programs, through our rent programs, through our income tax programs, and we've really got a handle on what's going on with respect to those people, and a lot of them are struggling to make ends meet. A lot of them are struggling to pay their rent. They're struggling to feed their families. Just this slide very quickly shows that there was a lot of research involved before we made that decision. Going back to 2012, we started a project called Action for Community Change, and we spent 2.5 years talking to people in the community, finding out what was important to them, where they saw there were deficiencies, where they saw we should be going. At the same time, Nordic and John Howard Society and the Sault Ste. Marie Police were doing their downtown dialogue. Many of you will remember that. And the DSAB was working on a 10-year homelessness plan. So all of this research together resulted in a number of things. We ended up with a 10-year homelessness plan. We ended up with the Neighborhood Resource Center on Gore Street, which was a result of the John Howard and Nordic work. As a result of the Action for Community Change, we implemented the Options Navigator for working for the John Howard Society, and United Way pays, and still does, the wages for that person to go and deal with people to find out what their needs are. And these positions work non-traditional hours. They work in the evenings. They walk alleys. They find people that are in trouble, and they try to help them, and they steer them in the right direction. So we ended up with a few plans as a result of this: the City of Sault Ste. Marie Strategic Action Plan to Reduce Poverty, and the United Way strategic plan, which piggybacked on the Sault Ste. Marie one. And we're now in our second round of 5-year plan from this work. And the one thing I'd like to point out too on this page is the Community Indicators Report. It's on our website, and if anybody is looking for an interesting read to find out where Sault Ste. Marie is at with respect to a lot of services and outcomes, it's a good place to start. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is our City of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario Poverty Reduction Plan. And you can see there are 5 priority areas, and food security is right at the top there. And food security has 3 outcomes. First off, as a community, we want members of Sault Ste. Marie and the surrounding area to have an increased knowledge of food security issues. So there's an education component there. People need to know what the options are. They need to know what they should be doing. And then there needs to be increased availability of healthy foods in the area, because knowing that you should eat healthy doesn't help you if you can't access healthy food. And then thirdly, people have to make the choice to have that, to eat that healthy food and to prepare their foods in a healthy manner. So we've got similar outcomes for each of the other areas, but we're focusing today on food security. And so I'm going to leave it at that, but just know that there is an overarching plan for the community. And United Way made a decision to tackle 3 of those 5 priorities that were identified in the community. So I'm going to jump a little bit here into just the greenhouse gases. And again, I'm sure that everybody is familiar with greenhouse gases and what they are and what they do, but I just thought we're not going to make any assumptions. I'll just very quickly go over some very basics, and I am by no means an expert on greenhouse gases, just some common knowledge. So, but they're gases in the atmosphere that help sustain life on our planet by trapping the sun's heat. And of course, some greenhouse gases have to be there. It's what allows the Earth to be the temperature that it is. The problem is when you get too many of these greenhouse gases, in the atmosphere, and they trap too much heat, and the temperature goes up, and all the natural balances that are there to control things like carbon dioxide end up out of whack, because as you cut down more trees, there's less trees consuming carbon dioxide. As you increase the temperature of the ocean, there's less carbon dioxide that can be dissolved in the ocean. So you've got all these factors that are balancing, and having too many greenhouse gases or too much greenhouse gas in the atmosphere, it can be problematic, as we all know. The greenhouse gases include, and I've got 6 of them here, and water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, ozone. Ozone is a little bit controversial. Some people include it in the list, some don't. It's obviously has some different characteristics and some different functions than the other ones, but I have seen it included in the list, so I've put it in there for interest's sake and conversation. Nitrous oxide and chlorofluorocarbons. So when you look at the global greenhouse gas emissions, carbon dioxide constitutes 76%. You'll see some numbers that are 65%, but there's 2 different sources of carbon dioxide that are quoted, and there's a 65% and an 11 that I've added together. Methane, which is what we're going to be talking about today, constitutes about 16% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And the interesting thing about methane is that it produces 86 times the global warming effect of carbon dioxide. That's over a 20-year period. You'll see other numbers that are lower, and they're usually based on a 100-year period. So tackling methane makes a lot of sense, because it can give you a bigger impact. So methane gas from food production, or from food waste, sorry, every 100 pounds of food that ends up in the landfill produces 8.3 pounds of methane gas. And for each metric ton of food waste that is put in a landfill, it's the equivalent to having 1 car on the road. I found that to be an interesting statistic. So the National Zero Waste Council has determined that 63% of the food Canadians throw away could have been eaten. And for the average Canadian household, that amounts to 140 kilograms of wasted food per year. And those costs add up. When you work that out for the entire nation, it's about $20 billion in food food value that is thrown in the landfill. That is an astounding number. So when you look at Canada's 2 million tons of avoidable household food waste, it's equivalent to having 2 million cars on the road when you look at the emission side of it. So if you take a close look at what people throw away, vegetables, 30%. When I think of my own household, that's not surprising. It's vegetables that seem to spoil quickly. 15% fruit. And then your meat and dairy and bakery and other things fall in. But when you look at again, from the same study, the whole nation, we've got 130,000 heads of lettuce being thrown out every day, 1.3 million tomatoes, 2.6 million potatoes, 650,000 loaves of bread, 1.3 million apples, 640,000 bananas, 1 million cups of milk, and 470,000 eggs. These are crazy numbers. So obviously, if you reduce food waste, you're saving money because you're buying less food, right? But you're also reducing methane emissions from the landfill. You also conserve energy that is required to grow, manufacture, transport wasted food. And then you conserve energy required to haul the waste to the landfill as well. So just I'm going to get into the Harvest Algoma in a second here, but I just want to set the tone a little bit. So food waste tips when you're shopping: if you plan your meals for the week and buy only what you need, that will help you. Look in your refrigerator and cupboards to avoid buying food you already have. Make a list of what needs to be used up and plan upcoming meals around it, and buy only what you need and will use. It sounds logical, sounds simple. And then there's the storing too. Freeze food that you won't be able to eat in time. Prep your ingredients. Wash, dry, chop, and place in clear containers. Clear containers, I think, is important because then you can look and see what you have. Store fruits and vegetables in separate bins. Store bananas, apples, and tomatoes by themselves. As many of you will know, they give off gases that will increase the process of going bad. Use leftover fruits and vegetables in smoothies, soups, and sauces, and compost food waste. So now we're going to jump back to United Way and Harvest Algoma. I just wanted to set the stage a little bit with some of that other information. So as I said, we took the city poverty reduction plan and we did a strategic planning session with United Way, and we decided to focus, and Paul mentioned this, on food security, workforce entry, and essential services. So workforce entry is assisting youth and unemployed adults in acquiring the skills necessary to enter the workforce. We know that helping people out of poverty, a good way to do that is to get them in a secure employment position. Essential services is helping people while they're getting back into the workforce. So helping people with rent, helping people with food, helping people with utilities, income tax returns, medical travel, all those things. And then food security is increasing the availability of healthy foods in the area, and very importantly, education on food security, because if the education piece isn't there, the rest falls apart. So Harvest Algoma was established in 2018, I believe Paul mentioned that as well, to address a significant gap in food security in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma district. The center includes a food warehouse and distribution, a commercial kitchen for processing, preserving, and meal preparation. And we have 2 Red Seal chefs that are employed that are working on the food processing and meal preparation side of it. And then we have the urban farm for food production, which consists of 2 greenhouses, 24 by 96 feet. They're good size, and a number of raised beds around the property. Food rescue and distribution. So Harvest Algoma accepts all food donations, and we do get regular donations from one grocery store in town. The grocery stores work with different food banks and soup kitchens, and our position is, as long as the food is going to somebody that's in need, we're good. We were designed as an upstream reservoir so that if there was surplus, it would come to us. We would preserve it and store it for when the soup kitchens and food banks and social service organizations needed it. So an interesting thing to mention is that we do not provide food directly to individuals. We work with organizations, and we have actually, as you can see on the slide, we've got over 70 now organizations that we work with that get food from us. So that includes social service organizations like Women in Crisis, Ken Brown Recovery Home, Phoenix Rising. It includes soup kitchens, it includes food banks, and that's from White River right through to Elliott Lake and Serpent River. So we've got quite a range that we cover. We rescued 3,330,000 pounds of food, which is 1,510 tons during our first 3 fiscal years. And a lot of that came in 2021 during the first wave of the pandemic. But this, when you look at the numbers that I went through a little while ago, that's like taking 1,510 cars off the road. by not putting that food in a landfill. So that's an incredible impact. Now, a lot of the food that we got isn't from Sault Ste. Marie. Obviously, that amount of food, it was coming from outside of the community. It was manufacturers that had all kinds of surplus food because all the restaurants shut down. They didn't know what to do with the food. They started transferring the food to places like Second Harvest in Toronto and Salvation Army. And those places would connect with organizations like ours, and they would send truckloads. And we were getting sometimes 3 transport loads in a week. And that would fill our facility completely. And we'd have to make sure that our partners came and got some and that we delivered it so that we could make room for the next load. And the interesting thing was all of the food was used. There was a need for it. And a lot of people have said to me, well, how in the world was there a need for so much food? And my answer is, I think there's always the need. The problem is that we've never had the supply before, so we couldn't test that. But certainly during the pandemic, we had, and I talk like it's over, it's not completely over, of course, but we had seniors that had never gotten help from anybody before that were shut in their homes. They couldn't, it wasn't safe for them to go grocery shopping. And so we were delivering food to folks like that as well. And we found all kinds of additional need that wasn't normally there. So it was good that we had the food come in and the capacity to deal with it. These are just some examples. We received a lot of mixed loads. On the left, you can see different pallets of different types of food. And on the right, you can see there's one transport load had nothing in it but milk. And we would receive some of those. We received a transport load that had 13,000 dozen eggs. And you can imagine that we had to deal with that one really quickly because we couldn't store 13,000 dozen eggs, of course. But what we did was we connected with all of our partners and we said, we've got this truck coming in and we need you to be on site when it arrives so that you can take basically what you can haul. And we managed to distribute them all. It was quite a feat. And we did that twice. And we would do it again anytime they wanted us to. And we'll get a call from the supply, from the distributors or the organizers at a place like Second Harvest, and they'll say, we've got this transport load. Sometimes they don't even have it. It's in a warehouse somewhere, and they'll say, can you go pick it up in this warehouse? We've been to Montreal to pick up food. We've been to London, Ontario to pick up food. We've been to Hamilton to pick up food. We've been using Log City Dairies as our transport, and they've been very good to us. And it's if you don't have a partnership like that, you're out of luck, because you get a call and say in 2 days there's a transport load of chicken, and do you want it? If so, pick it up. If you don't have a means, then you're out of business. So we rely heavily on our partnerships. The other thing that we found is that Ken Brown Recovery Home is one of the places that gets food from us, and they're also receive funding from United Way. They send a team. And they sent a team every time we received transport. We've had to date 74 transport loads of food come in. And Ken Brown Recovery Home has come and unloaded those loads every single time. So, having those partners is really, really important. These are some of our partner organizations, and it's not all of them, it's about half. We haven't updated the list. But you can see, different food banks, different social service organizations in Indigenous communities, Sault College, Algoma University, students that are going to university and college. A lot of them live in poverty, and they have their college and university food banks, and they're used quite heavily. So we've been supplying food to those organizations as well. Basically, anyone that needs food that is feeding people that are in need, we will work with them. So the commercial kitchen and processing, we've been producing 1,000 hot meals a week. When the DSAB, I'm sure you've all seen articles in the news media about our local DSAB running emergency shelters for homeless people that had COVID, and they've set up a number of shelters around the community. We provided the food for all of those shelters, and we also were providing, and it's been cut back for the summer, but we were providing meals to the Indigenous Friendship Center for programming that they had. Also, we were making meals and packaging them and giving them to the Salvation Army to deliver to seniors that they had on their list. We also worked with Algoma Family Services and delivered food boxes to seniors on a monthly basis for about a year and a half during the pandemic. So it really was really important to have those partnerships and to reach all of those people. Obviously, the chefs had to be creative because they didn't put in an order for we need a truckload with these things on it. Truckloads would arrive and we got what we got, and they would go into our warehouse and they would shop to see what we had available, and they would make meals with what was there, and they would supplement by buying some things, but the goal was not to buy a lot. And they're really talented in that way, and hundreds of volunteer hours. It was incredible. We received very large containers of potatoes, and I don't know how these things would be, probably 6 or 7 feet square and about 4 feet high, and well, probably more than 4 feet high, probably about 5 or 6 feet high. And they're filled with potatoes, bulk, and they would just drop these things off. And we had to repackage them. Well, you imagine the volunteer hours that were required in order to do that. But we found that we got a lot of food brought to us because we were willing to do that. We had the volunteer base. If we were offered a bulk supply of vegetables, which we were, frozen vegetables, that we had to repackage, we'd say, sure, we'll take it. And in talking to places like Second Harvest, they said there's some people that just say, no, we don't want that. So we were fortunate that we had the volunteer base that we could bring in some labor intensive product and still move it. But we had one of the first trucks we received was a truckload of mixed meat, and you wouldn't believe what was on that truck. There were steaks on that truck. There was bacon. There was ribs, like things that, Ron Sim from the soup kitchen came and he said, like, people that come to the soup kitchen have never seen food like this. And it was surplus and it was going to spoil if it wasn't used. And so they sent it to us, so you just never really know. And the other thing that I found was interesting was when you have a warehouse, people bring you stuff. We got offered early in the pandemic a truckload of face masks, and I did a rough calculation. I thought, okay, we're going to get a couple of 100,000 face masks. We can deal with that. Transport arrives, and there were 1.8 million face masks on this transport, and we did distribute them all though, so it was good, but it was just kind of amazing, the number. And then we received another load that had 23,500 milliliter bottles of hand sanitizer. So it just because we were equipped to receive, people just started sending us stuff. So it was really incredible. These are just some of the volunteers doing some work. They get quite a system going. When you're producing 1,000 meals a week, you need to be organized and you need a system. So we're very fortunate to have the people that we have. This is a bunch of pickles that were made, and they've preserved them so that they'll sit on a shelf and they can be used down the road. So then food production. We've got one greenhouse up and running, and the second one is in the process of being put up right now. The framing is up. I think that we've still got some electrical wiring to do because of where it is. Running the electrical wiring was quite a chore. They had to trench it, and the wire was a lot longer than originally anticipated. And all the things you run into, the good things when you're doing construction. But we are working on the second one, and we will have it up and running soon. And then we've got a number of raised beds around the property as well. And we're currently producing, this is with the one greenhouse and the raised beds, 4,500 pounds of produce per year, which is equivalent to about 2 metric tons. So guess what? That's 2 cars. And here's some of our produce. And I don't know if Carson is blocked out. He's blocked out in my view because I've got Ted and myself and Paul over top of him. But the guy in the picture on the left, that's Carson, who was going to give this talk to you tonight. And unfortunately, he's not well. So Carson is our master of the greenhouse, and he actually erected them as well. He did the work to put them up, and he takes very good care of them. So education, I've talked about education before, and certainly education is extremely important with respect to food security. We've got classrooms coming through, we've got students coming through all the time. It's amazing the help we get from the various high schools. And we've also had some programs with the Indigenous Friendship Center and the Métis Nation of Ontario to provide training opportunities for youth. We've helped to educate people in growing food, in processing food, in cooking food. We also partner with Algoma Family Services, their Community Kitchens program, where they actually teach people to buy in bulk and prepare foods for the whole week and preserve them. So the whole package is really important that people understand, the right way to purchase food and the right way to prepare and preserve. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is, in many cases, having more money is a great answer to solving poverty, because you see people that are living on very little income, and you wonder how in the world they manage to make ends meet. But then you find there are situations where people aren't making wise choices because they don't have a car, they can't get to a grocery store, so they go and they buy their groceries at a corner store. And just think about the price difference and how much more you're paying for the groceries that you do get. And so again, pointing those things out and pointing out how you can buy in larger quantities and how you can buy with coupons and things like that's really good information to pass on to people who may not know that. So education is really important part of food security. And I think that is something that we haven't done before, but bringing in the whole greenhouse gas component of it is important too, because not only are you wasting money when you're buying or when you're not eating all of your food, you're impacting the environment. And I think that's an important education piece as well that we need to add in. So these are a number of our students that we've had. Now they're standing in the right there in the warehouse in front of a number of pallets of food that we've received. And on the left, they're in the kitchen helping out. And it's interesting, you see on the left on the table, one of those large egg cartons. That's how our 13,000 dozen eggs came in those containers, in that packaging. So in many cases, we had to transfer them to smaller packaging because if they're going to a food bank and they're going to be given to a family, they can't deal with that flat of eggs like that. So so this is just and I borrowed this from the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States. So I thought it was a really nice picture that has a lot of information in it. It's the food recovery hierarchy. So obviously the simple solution to wasting food is you produce less, right? But obviously if people are wasting, the producers are still going to make more because there's a market for it. The second tier down is feed hungry people. Well, that's where we come in. That's what we do. That's our bailiwick. We take the food and we preserve it so that we can extend the life. We turn it into meals. We give it to the organizations that need it to feed people. Third, feed animals, divert food scraps to animal food. Fourth is industrial uses. Fifth is composting, and then last is the landfill. So if you work through that list, hopefully very little gets to the landfill. There's always going to be some that's going to get there because some food just, it's going to be waste. Chicken bones and things like that. That's always going to end up in a landfill. So, and I think, yeah, that's basically my presentation. I mentioned to Ted and Paul, this is actually my last official day as CEO of United Way. I'm retiring, so my successor is Laurie Houston, and Raina Evoy is the fundraising manager for United Way. And if you have any questions about the operation of Harvest Algoma, you could certainly contact either of them at these numbers or email addresses, and they would help you out. Or if they couldn't help you, they would direct you to Carson, who is the man with all the answers with respect to Harvest Algoma for sure. So I hope that was a useful bit of information for you. It was kind of a quick overview. I could talk for many hours about Harvest Algoma. I don't think I can talk as long about greenhouse gases because I don't have the depth background in that field. But certainly food security is a passion of mine and is a passion of United Way, and we feel that it's very important in our region, and that we need to carry on with this kind of work.
Thanks so much, Gary. Before we get into some questions from folks, I'd just like to say thanks a lot for that incredible presentation, really, to get a picture of the scope of the work Harvest Algoma has been doing in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma District is incredible, really eye-opening to me, and I think a lot of people as well. And thanks a lot for pinch hitting on your second last day of work or last day of work. We really appreciate that with Carson unable to be here. And also, Gary, I mean, you did an awesome job really connecting food waste and Harvest Algoma to climate change mitigation too, which I think some things I hadn't heard of there in terms of tying it to that, which was really important link to make for this audience and this group. So thanks so much. I'll say that off the top. And now we've got a bit of time here. If folks have any questions for Gary about Harvest Algoma, anything that he talked about, we can use the chat and I'll try and relay things to Gary, or people can just raise a hand or unmute and ask a question. So, David, have you got something you want to ask?
Well, I just want to cast my memory back to when I knew Gary. I think you had some time in Sudbury, Gary, did you not? We met years and years ago, and I just want to say that was one of the most inspiring presentations that I've heard in years. It really was. It was the legacy that you're leaving behind, to be able to present something like that on your last day of work should make you very, very proud, Gary. It really, really ought. I mean, the impact on people's lives, the impact on their well-being, the extent and the scope of what you've put together is really, truly wonderful. I think that Sault Ste. Marie should find a way to honor you for your work. To be honest, you've contributed to the community in a way that I think few people possibly could. Really, really wonderful. I did have a question. Is it possible for you to link with perhaps remote First Nation communities to arrange for some of this food to be flown by a donor to some remote First Nation communities?
Yeah, thank you very much for your kind words as well. I absolutely, it does happen. No, not from our center. We deal with specifically the District of Algoma, but Second Harvest out of Toronto is a national food rescue organization, and they're our main source of food. And they are the largest food rescue organization in Canada. And I know that they have shipments that go out to remote communities. They've done it. They do it on a regular basis. But certainly, any organization involved in food rescue that has a good supply would certainly do that. There's no question about that. We certainly work with the Indigenous populations around us, and as I said, the Métis Nation of Ontario and the Indigenous Friendship Center. We absolutely would do that if we had a remote community within our jurisdiction. The thing about United Ways is that, we're set up in regions, and we work within those regions, and we basically don't go outside of those regions, because if we do, we're treading on somebody else's toes. And so we have to be careful about that. But certainly Second Harvest would be a good partner to for someone that wanted to get involved in that, to talk to.
Good. Thanks, David, and thanks, Gary. Couple of questions on the chat here, Gary, from Danielle. Wonderful talk. Thank you. The vehicle comparison was great, very tangible. For folks who might not know, if we have extra food from our gardens, can we take it right to Harvest Algoma on Second Line any given day?
Yes. There's somebody there. They work 8:30 to 4:30, but they're, I would say give them till 9 o'clock to get things organized. So anytime between 9 and 4, say, there's always volunteers there, and there's always staff there. Yes, absolutely. Drop off any surplus you have. We would appreciate it very much, and we'll make sure it gets put to good use.
Good. And another question, Gary, from Ruth Prescanoia. Excellent presentation. Does the 14,000 people living in poverty in Algoma include children? That is a staggering number.
Yes, it does. It's families. Families are included in that, and it is a staggering number. And I know the first time, and this was back in, oh my goodness, probably 2004 or 2005, and we as a community put out a homelessness, a risk of homelessness report, and we had reporters telling us we were all crazy. We said, there's no way the numbers are that high, but it was just defined in a manner that it was people at risk of being homeless. So one paycheck away. So you may be okay for your entire life. You're living on the edge, but if you lost your income for 1 month, you'd be in trouble. And those are people that are included in that 14,000 as well. But again, we saw those numbers increase when when the pandemic hit, because people just they couldn't get the services, and they couldn't do what they normally did. But they include people on social assistance, Ontario Works, Ontario Disability. They include people that are laid off and collecting EI. They include low-income wage earners, the working poor. A lot of the people that come to us for help are working. Some of them are working 2 and 3 jobs, and they're still not making enough money to make ends meet. There's a lot of people that need assistance that are very hardworking people. It also includes seniors that are on fixed incomes, and they're not enough for them to make ends meet. And you get the catch-22, because somebody will come in and their rent will be too high, and they'll say, I'm moving to a place with better rent. And then next time you talk to them, the rent is lower, but their utilities are out of control, because the place has lower rent because it's not properly insulated or doesn't have the proper windows. And it really is a catch-22. But there are a lot of people that are living very close to the line, and it is really disheartening to see some folks that come in and they're just struggling to get by, and there's no explanation for why they have to live like that.
Thanks, Gary. A couple more on the chat here. Carmen asks, as COVID measures retire, is the food flow continuing? I believe the need continues and may not be growing. So you mentioned that in your presentation, that you were getting a lot from restaurants.
Yes.
How's the food now then, the food flow?
It has slowed down, but I actually visited Second Harvest last month, and had a conversation with the managers there and the CEO about food supply, because we're not in Toronto. They are a national organization, but they have a lot of obligations in the Toronto area, and I wanted to make sure that we were on their list and that they didn't forget about us. And they assured me that we are on their list, and that we will get a regular supply of food, but not like we were getting in mid-pandemic. I mean, 3 trucks in a week, that just isn't going to happen. But in the month of June, we've received 2 transport loads, and I'm anticipating that we'll probably get at least 1 truckload every month, which is still a reasonable amount of food. We get in a truckload, we get about $125,000 to $150,000 worth of food, and all we pay for is the transportation. So we pay about $3,000, and we get $150,000 worth of food, and that's a pretty good deal.
And
But to answer your question, absolutely, it has slowed down.
But Gary, a good thing is you mentioned that your food production is ramping up locally, right?
Yes.
Through the greenhouses
Yes.
at the same time. So that,
Yes.
I mean, that's another approach to that, to maintain some supply locally, right?
Yeah, and we certainly we have a group, and I believe I saw Tim Kelly on the call, and a group that Tim's involved with, Connect the Dots, does a food rescue for farmers markets, and a couple times a week, and they're bringing in food all through the summer that again is rescued, and as I mentioned before, we get food from United Way gets food from Rome's, and then there are all the Metro stores give food to Salvation Army. So there is an effort locally on the grocery store part not to waste food as well, to take food that needs to be moved quickly, and get it in the hands of people that need it. And one of the big things is the best before versus expiry date. a best before date, that's a quality issue, right? Like, it's going to taste the best, have the best flavor. It's going to be in the best condition before that date, but it's not bad when it gets past that date until it hits its expiry. And so you need to be able to judge, what how much life is left in that food. What can we do with it? Rather than just say, well, it's at the best before date, we got to turf it in the garbage. And I think that's a big part of the education as well. Now, I'm not sure that you want to go to a grocery store and buy food that is all past its best before date. But if you received a hot meal prepared by a Red Seal chef with some ingredients that maybe were just beyond their best before date, I'm not sure you would notice.
That's great, Gary. Tim mentioned the Connect the Dot program here in one chat item, and then he's also said that again, to build on what you're just saying there, that some of the grocery stores locally are participating, but not all of them are. So that could be another way to increase the local food supply, would be for all the grocery stores in town to step up and provide food before it's gone to waste.
Yes, and the other thing is that, as I mentioned before, we Harvest Algoma staff are certified in food rescue, and that allows them to go to a banquet facility and take the food that's left over after a banquet and process it. Because they've been trained in how to do that and what's safe and what isn't. So we don't have a lot of banquets going on yet. But when we get back to more normal times and there are all these functions going on, there's another source of food. Because imagine how much food gets wasted from one of those big banquets.
Gary, a more general question here from Rob Fleming. What's the greatest obstacle to continue doing this great work moving forward?
Well, our biggest obstacle always is the resources, the financial resources to support the operation. It's a $500,000 a year project, Harvest Algoma, and we need to continually come up with the money to support that, and we apply to all kinds of different government organizations. The local DSAB gives us money. The district DSAB gives us money. We've gotten money from the Ontario Trillium Foundation. The Ontario Trillium Foundation bought us 2 delivery vans, a refrigerated trailer. They paid for the purchase of the greenhouses, both greenhouses. They bought our forklift, without which we could not unload a single truck. So we get a lot of support in those ways, but we have to continue every year to keep pushing to get more and to get something different, because obviously Trillium isn't going to give us money every year to buy equipment. And we've been lucky with the DSABs. They've been very supportive. In fact, the Sault Ste. Marie DSAB gave us the startup money to start Harvest Algoma before we even had a location. And it was because of the local Sault Ste. Marie DSAB that we had the money to sign a lease on the old Croatian Hall and move in there. And we've since purchased the building and mortgaged it. And there's some savings in that as well. But that's the biggest challenge year to year, is that we need to come up with the operating funds. And I would say that is absolutely our biggest challenge.
Gary, before I go to another chat question here, I just got to follow up myself on that. Have you guys looked into anything related to climate change in that way, from the funding point of view, and climate change mitigation funding that might be available for something like Harvest Algoma?
Yeah, no, we haven't. And certainly, like I was always aware that, diverting from the landfill was the right thing to do and good for the environment. But I must be honest with you, I did the research to pull this presentation together, and it opened my eyes a bit too.
There's a few other, I'd say, more kudos here, Gary, than questions. Margaret Barbeau has written, important to teach people how to shop and cook to enable them to eat within budget. Prepared foods are expensive not to mention less nutritious. So education matters. Thanks for your work. And then another one from Kara Flanagan about all the preservation, the gardening, the cooking courses from the chefs. So impressed with this initiative overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's see here. Kara again, APH can help with best before date understanding and education. I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
linkage, another partnership for you down the road or for Lori down the road with Harvest Algoma.
Yeah.
And then here's a question from Carmen. Thank you for a great presentation that has provided tremendous insight to an otherwise mostly hidden issue. Do you know of any legislative barriers that prevent the donation of food or that donors should know when they are considering making donations?
Certainly any restrictions would be from the public health perspective. I don't think any other levels of government would have any issue with any kind of food donations, but certainly the concern is the safety issue and the safe handling and making sure that it's dealt with properly so that you're not subjecting people to food that is not good for them.
Good. And just one more here. Kara put down Second Harvest has the guide for this from Toronto Public Health, I guess. So
yeah, it's and Second Harvest is like I say, it's a great operation. They have I kind of shake my head when I think about it. They have walk-in refrigerators and freezers that will hold 200 pallets of food. 200 pallets. They're incredible. And they can drive in with forklifts. We've got these, we actually have 3 walk-in freezers now, but the 3 of them combined wouldn't take up a fraction of what Second Harvest has, but still very important to have. But they're such a big operation. They've got so much coming through that they've got to have that. And it's a 48,000 square foot warehouse that they have. Just incredible. It opened my eyes when I went down there.
well, that's great, Gary. We're an hour in right now, and so I think we'll finish off here. I just want to thank you again for the presentation. For those of you that are still here, just to let you know, our webinar series will be taking a break through the summer in July and August, and we'll be restarting the webinars in September for the Sioux Climate Hub for the fall period. So you'll see information in the local media and in our social media to let you know what's coming up in the fall. Thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight. And again, a big thank you for Gary and the work of the United Way. And I'll second David Pearson's motion to say, yeah, for everything you've done for the community, Gary, over the last 21 years as CEO of the United Way. And Algoma District, thanks so much, and enjoy your retirement.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for your attention. It's certainly my pleasure to be here and to present to you.
Quick question for you, Paul. We're not having any presentations over the summer, but did you want to mention anything about our electric vehicle?
Oh yeah, that's a good point, Ted. Yeah, we're going to be involved with the Sioux PUC at Rotary Fest to have some EVs on display with their owners as part of Rotary Fest in mid-July. What are the dates? The 24th, the 25th, I think, and the 26th of July. So there'll be something more about that in the news media shortly. And again, the idea to display to the public and a bit of education around, thanks, Danielle. Yeah, not the 24th, the 14th to the 16th. Thanks a lot. So look for it in the Rotary Fest program coming up mid-month. Thanks for that reminder, Ted. All right.
It isn't here again. Can I just share a little story with Gary that has made a lot of difference to my views on wasting food. I grew up in just after the Second World War in England, and when I went to shop for groceries, I had to go with a ration book, and I could only buy what the tickets in the ration book allowed my family to buy. So I'd go to the store and I'd get a quarter pound of butter, and that was a ticket in the ration book. And one of the attitudes that I came out of my childhood with was waste not, want not. And that came from my grandmother and from my parents. And I do think that some of the behavior I see in grocery stores and that I see in restaurants when people leave food on their plates, it's attitudinal. It comes from just not valuing food the way that I grew up to value it. And I think, and also the carbon footprint of food. You know, an orange was a Christmas present for me when I was a kid. It was not something I'd walk into a store and buy a dozen of. It was something very, very special. And people don't think about how special food is. And if you go into a grocery store and you buy oranges from South Africa and strawberries from California, think about the carbon footprint of that food. And think about what you're wasting when you don't eat it, and when your kids just push half the orange to the edge of the plate and say, "I'm full, I don't want any more," or they take it for lunch and they don't eat it. If only we could begin with the education of children. I mean, it's almost impossible to do that in the context of the attitudes that parents bring to the way that the family treats food. But I just came across a photo of a ration book the other day, just like the ration book that I went to the grocery store with when I was a kid, and it brought back those memories and the value of the attitudes that I got from my parents and my grandparents, and actually my great grandparents too, who went through 2 wars, not just the aftermath of one that I grew up with. So, you know, you brought back stories and and reminiscences to me too with what you spoke about tonight.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks
David.
so much.
Thank you. I actually have one quote, if you have time for one quick quote. It is, if food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, coming after China and the United States.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that
I'm going to write that
eye-opening?
one down. 3rd largest country. Okay. It's that's amazing. That's amazing.
Great. Well, thanks again all for tuning in, and thanks Gary here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Have
Thanks
a
so
good
much.
evening, folks.